All right, welcome back to Dietitians Who Lift. My name is Summer, the dietitian, and I am here with dietitian Rebecca Schubert. Did I say that right?
Correct.
Good. I'm trying really hard to get everybody's names right. It's very nerve-wracking. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming on. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Rebecca Schubert. I'm a registered dietitian, been the dietitian for almost 20 years. I can't believe it when I say that. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. I'm also a national board certified health and wellness coach. I currently work as a consultant in higher ed, but I also have a private practice that I do on the side. That's called One Step Nutrition Coaching. And I launched that business about a year ago. It's been quite the adventure and a lot of learning. There's a big difference between being good at your skill of being a dietitian and being good at the skills of building a business and marketing yourself as a dietitian. So I've had to learn all that and still am learning. My business is also insurance based. And so not only have I had to learn about how to create my niche and to develop a website and create a marketing plan, but I've also had to learn how to bill insurance. So it's been fun and challenging and really interesting.
So much to talk about and all of that. Like, what prompted the decision? 20 years a dietitian, tons of experience. I'm sure you've worked in multiple different kind of avenues. You're consulting in higher ed. What prompted the I'm gonna start a business now? Like, why now? What brought that to be?
So about 10 years ago, well, my first nutrition job out of college was working for the WIC program, which I think is probably a place that a lot of dietitians start. At that point, I had a bachelor's in dietetics, but I was not yet a dietitian. And so there's not a lot of jobs that you can do in the field of nutrition unless you're a dietitian. And so I got this job working for the WIC program, and I quickly saw that there was a lot of opportunity to improve how services were provided to folks. And so I decided to go back and get a master's degree because if I was going to advance in state government, I needed an additional degree. So I went back to school, got a master's in nutrition education, got my RD, came back to the state of Vermont at the time where I was, and got a job in a supervisory role. And after some time, realized it's very difficult to make change in state government. And so I left there, and a friend of mine was working at a local hospital, and he called me up one day and he said, "How would you like to come here and be a health coach?" And I had no idea what that was. This was back in 2007, maybe 2008, when the world of health coaching had not exploded like it has today. And so I had no idea what that was, but I figured coaching is probably very similar to supervision in terms of it's about supporting people. And so I took this job working in primary care as a health coach, got trained and certified as a health coach, and got really burnt out.
Why? What was the volume, the time, the short visits? Like, was it because I imagine you say health coach now? I hear a lot of dietitians are getting hired into health coaching roles at like CVS, Caremark. They do a telehealth health coaching, and you could be a dietitian to get that job. And I had hired a dietitian at another program who said they came from there and they were doing 15-minute sessions back to back to back to back all day, every day, no time to breathe, and were frustrated because they couldn't really use their skills as a health coach, let alone as a dietitian. What was you were doing this in person at the time?
Yeah, so I was paid a salary to work for a hospital that owned all of the primary care practices within the hospital service area. And so I was embedded in three different primary care practices plus OBGYN. And so I would travel around and see clients at the different practices. And so all the clients would come to see me in the office. And it was a huge volume of clients. I had a huge waiting list. The management was not very supportive, but even all of that, like when you look at the research about burnout, the types of people who are most likely to burn out are the people who are most passionate about the work, right? Like I was so passionate about the work that I failed to uphold my own boundaries, and I just gave and gave and gave. I'd have clients come who'd say like, "Well, can I come in at 7:30 because I don't want to be late for work? And can I come in at 4:30 so I don't have to leave early? And can you see me at lunchtime? And can you squeeze me in?" And I just kept saying yes and yes and yes because I really valued the work. But over time, it just took a significant emotional toll because to really listen to people, as you know, it takes an inordinate amount of energy, to really like be present with your clients. You have to have a lot of empathy, but you also have to be able to just sort of be in the present moment. And after 8 years of that, I got
Wow, that's
really
a long
tired.
time
I
to
got
be
really
health
tired.
coaching. Yeah, I feel that. I think there are some days where the nutrition sessions that I do and the coaching sessions that I do just feel heavier than other days. And, we're working with people who are living their very real lives, and life sucks sometimes, and you're trying to help people navigate that with their food and nutrition and their health. Big other issues come up, right? And their marriages and their jobs and their
Correct.
stress and their financial situations, and their mental health, and
Yeah.
that can be a lot to absorb as just another person. How do you deal with that now? I mean, it sounds like you've moved into this private practice where you have a little, hopefully, more boundaries.
Yeah.
Is that helping?
So that experience was, I mean, when I say burnout, I mean like full on emotional exhaustion burnout, not just like I'm tired and I'm stressed out, but it really took a toll on my physical health, my emotional health, my mental health. And so I left that job and I took the job that I have now where my job title is Employee Wellbeing Program Coordinator. So I am basically in charge of employee wellness at a number of institutions that are members of our nonprofit. And so I still get to promote health and well-being, but I do it from afar. And so your question of why did I decide to start a private practice is I was really missing that one-on-one connection with people. Right now I'm sort of doing population health. And so you don't have that same one-on-one. And so I decided to start this practice, but I went into it with the understanding that I don't want to do it full time, that it's just going to be a business on the side. And so I really get to pick and choose my clients, which makes a big difference.
What's your ideal client? I know that, these coaching programs tell you you've got to pick a niche, you've got to decide who your ideal client is, you got to have a way to figure that out. Like, what's your
Yeah.
ethos with your private practice?
Yeah. So my dream client is mostly women in their 40s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, who have been dieting their whole lives and yet have not been able to achieve the outcomes that they're looking for. They typically have a lot of issues around food and their bodies, maybe emotional eating, history of like looking for the quick fix. They tend to fall into the trap of believing this next diet is going to solve my challenge. But they also need to be someone who is open and willing to be vulnerable and willing to dive deeper into what's behind their eating. Because if it was truly about, I don't know how many calories to eat or how many grams of protein to eat, it would be so easy, right?
Right. It's
But
very rarely about that. I find that most people who have dieted most of their lives, most women in America, have more nutrition knowledge than they even need.
correct.
Yeah, it's not a knowledge deficit.
Correct. The problem is putting it into action, right? And so when you look at challenges, there's two sort of types of challenges. There's technical challenges, which is like the knowledge piece, right? It's like black or white. Do this thing, get this outcome, right? Eat this many calories, achieve this weight gain, weight loss, whatever. But underneath that, there's the adaptive piece of it, which is what's driving my eating, right? And that could be anything from a past history of trauma or abuse to needing to self-soothe to boredom to I don't want to disappoint my friends or family. Like there's so many other things, right? And like what you said is most of the people who struggle, it's because they have some sort of adaptive challenge that they're trying to solve with a technical solution, right?
I love
If you're struggling with, for example, binge eating disorder, counting calories is not going to solve your challenge, right? Another diet is not going to solve your challenge. And until you're willing to be vulnerable and look seriously at what's driving your behavior, you're never going to change.
it was powerful. Looking at your adaptive challenges and then trying to slap a quick fix
Technical
on it.
solution. Correct.
Yeah, a technical solution is just not gonna fit. What are some of your go-to adaptive solutions? Like, how do you tackle this in the session with somebody? Because you really specialize in like this coaching and the motivation and the behavioral change, talking through these things.
Mhm.
Are there methods that you subscribe to? Do you have a certain way of doing this with every client, or is it very unique? What's your strategy for managing a session?
Number one is the client has to be able to uncover what their adaptive challenge is.
Mhm.
Right, and that takes some work. And so one of the best ways to do that is, so I'm just going to use the example of weight loss because that's what 90% of my clients come to me for, and it's an
Thank you.
easy example.
Yeah.
It's an easy example to use, right? So a client comes to me because they want to lose weight, and I deduce from our conversation that it's not a technical issue. It's not just they need a meal plan, right? That there's something else going on there. So fine. So now I know, okay, we've got an adaptive challenge that we're working with. So the next piece is helping them to identify what that might be. And so one of the best ways to do that is to have them put on their detective hat and observe their behavior for a week or two, and to note everything they are doing or not doing that goes against their goal.
Mm.
Right. So they might, for example, their goal is I want to maintain a healthier weight, right? And then they observe, well, what am I doing or not doing? So I'm not planning my meals in advance. I'm not cooking at home. I'm going out to eat too much. I'm eating the snacks at the office too much. I'm eating my feelings, whatever it is, right? And then you got to start to dive deeper into like what is the assumptions or mindset that is supporting that behavior that's either going against the goal or making it difficult to achieve
So
the goal.
working backwards from the actual habit
Correct.
to why.
Correct. And that's hard for people to figure out a lot of times.
Yeah. And not just saying, well, because I'm hungry, or like we've got to keep, well, why do we feel like, do we even understand hunger? Like, what is our perception? And then there's the perception of why we're doing something. And then there's a real reason why we're doing something. Or like I think I see this a lot in weight management. It's like, oh, I just can't stop eating sweets because I just really love them. And we
Mhm.
tell ourselves this story because we just really love them. They're my favorite food. I just can't, if I see them, I just can't stop eating. I was like, but you want to stop doing it. And so, what is the motivation for stopping versus the motivation for continue? I like to have that conversation. Why are you motivated to do this behavior in the first place? And why are you motivated to change it? And if we can't find a good why, then maybe we don't have to work on that right now. Maybe we go find something where we have more motivation to change it. Because sometimes people say they want to change a behavior and then they don't actually really want to. They think they're supposed to change the behavior, they think they're supposed to stop doing this thing, but they love this thing
Mhm.
and they have no motivation to actually change it. Then we need to work on
But the love thing is interesting too, right? Because when many people say they just love food, they're not eating it in a way that shows love,
that. Mhm.
right? When I love something, I want to like savor it. I want to be like, "Oh my god, this is so good," right? I want to make it last. But what most people are doing is they're sitting in front of the television with a bag of Doritos like not even tasting it, right? That is not loving food. And so I think in terms of that, it's like we have to help people get to the point where like they can love and savor food, because when you love and savor it, you're truly satisfied and you're satisfied with much less, right?
And
But
you respect the food for what it is and how it fuels you and, like, the way it brings you, if it actually brings you joy, you can love that about the food. And sometimes people say, "Well, I love this food, but it's harming me."
Mhm.
Well, is that love? That sounds like an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love how you get beyond the food. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that we're trained in coaching and motivational interviewing and having these hard conversations around behavior in general.
Mhm.
And usually it's about a food behavior, but it is so applicable to lots of other health behaviors, right? As a health coach, do you find that training really improved your practice as a dietitian and helped you like evaluate other people, like sleep and exercise and these sort of things? Has that made you a better dietitian? Or do you think as a dietitian, you became a better health coach? How would
No,
you,
I think that
who are
I
you?
can say with 100% certainty that my coach training that I did through a company called Well Coaches, which is really the leader in the field in health coaching. They're really the pioneers who are moving forward to push coaches to become certified. It completely changed my practice as a dietitian. So I think back to, I'm going to like get upset. I'm going to get like teary when I tell this story because it's just so emotional for me. I think back to one of my first clients that I ever had working at the WIC program. She was 19, morbidly obese, pregnant with her second child by her stepfather. She was very low income. She had no support. And she came in with her little food frequency questionnaire that she was required to do so that she could get our free government cheese and milk. And I sat there and lectured her about why she should eat more vegetables. Because as 20 years ago, that's kind of how we were trained as dietitians. You identify someone's deficiency and you tell them what to do about it, right? And that's what I did. And if I could find that woman today and apologize to her, I
Oh,
would do that because I didn't know, right? I didn't know. And so over
gosh,
the
you're gonna
last,
make me cry.
it
Well,
really is.
these are the first tears on the show, and they're so good. Ugh,
I mean, she must have walked out of there feeling terrible, right? And so,
right?
like, now my approach with my clients is if nothing else, I want them to leave feeling better than when they came. That's it. If that's the only outcome I get for the visit, that's fine. But so over the last 10 years or so since I've got trained in coaching, I talk a lot less and I ask a lot more questions. And in terms of the clients that I work with, it's really interesting what you said in the beginning about like most of these people have more nutrition knowledge than probably they'll ever need, right? I rarely talk about how many calories you should be eating, how much protein you should be eating, meal timing, supplements. I rarely ever talk about that stuff. It's all about the behaviors because that's ultimately what it is, right? People aren't struggling because they don't know what to do. They're struggling because they don't know how to do it. And oftentimes they spin their wheels thinking they need to get more education, right? Or more knowledge so they can be successful. It's like the same as like dietitians or any other profession where when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, right? You think if I just learn more, it's going to help me. But that's really just a procrastination tool, right? It's kind of the same thing.
Tell me more about that. How do we overcome that imposter syndrome? Because I mean, I have it, and it's like
We
I
all have it.
we all have it, but like I got contacted the other day to participate in a webinar series to to be a facilitator of continuing education about nutrition on the GLP-1s. And I was like, me? They're like, well, yeah, you literally wrote a book. And I'm like, I did
You
write
wrote
a
the
book,
book.
but like, I mean, I don't know. And a lot of people have read it yet. Like, I don't know, and they're like, no, you're the name that comes up when you're like, is there a dietitian that knows about GLP-1s? And I'm like, I guess that's me. Okay, sure. I'll do this CDR webinar thing with you. And they're like, no, you are a name that comes up. And I'm like, how did that happen? I feel like I am not the most educated dietitian. I have not done all of the trainings and all of the webinars. I don't have the most knowledge, all things nutrition. And I gaslight myself a lot, thinking that because I'm not a specialist in everything there is to know about nutrition, that I'm not the best dietitian because I am really not super great at like gut health stuff. Fiber's important. Eat enough of it. Drink your
Yeah.
water. Go for a walk. You want me to talk to you about the intricacies of fiber? That's not, I got to get my textbook out. Right. And like, I gaslight myself that I'm not an expert on all things. Therefore, I'm not good enough or whatever. And I think a lot of people do that in terms their own like clients don't think that they are good enough at their nutrition because they don't know everything there is to know.
Well, it's like going to a restaurant that has like a 5-page menu, right? The food's gonna suck there because they don't specialize, right? You want to go to the place that has, 5 appetizers, 5 entrees. The food's going to be amazing because they specialize, right? And I think it's the same thing is that you want to become a specialist. You don't want to be a generalist, right? And that's why I say I pick and choose my clients because I don't want clients who have complicated issues that I'm not familiar with. First of all, it's not where I am in the flow, right? I'm not in the flow when I'm trying to do that. And second of all, I'm not serving my client the best. And like that's part of the code of ethics, right? Is that we need to do our best to support our clients the best. And sometimes that means we're not the right dietitian for them. And that's fine. But
It can be tough though, as like if you're a brand new dietitian or you're brand new to private practice and you're trying to build up your clientele, or like right now I see a lot of dietitians, and I maybe want to touch on this with you because I feel like you've got this perspective of all these dietitians who are signing up with programs as like 1099 dietitians where they're doing the outpatient private practice thing, but they're just getting fed clients through a portal. They're just popping up on their calendar and they're just doing the session. Whatever comes their way, they have to do this session. And they don't get to choose their client. They don't get to have that or the client doesn't get to choose them. They just get assigned to them. And as a dietitian, it's really hard. Like you can't say no. I guess you could say, well, I don't work with these people. I only work with these people. But if you need the volume and the experience, I don't know. How would you, if you had a friend that was a brand new dietitian, talk to them about navigating that? Say, don't associate with those things and get a job. I mean, I think being in the hospital was really helpful for me as when my time that I spent working in a hospital really exposed me to a lot of different conditions and a lot of different people from all sorts of populations and ages. And that was great for me and my knowledge base, right? So I think a new dietitian might benefit from having a bajillion different clients with different problems because you might not
Sure.
even know what your niche is yet.
Correct, and so did I, right?
Yeah.
Working in the WIC program, I had a lot of clients with a lot of different needs. I spent almost 10 years working in primary care, doing they called it health coaching, but I was basically doing medical nutrition therapy a lot of the times for patients with diabetes and heart failure and hypertension and weight management and, sort of run the gamut as well. If, people do need to make a living,
Yeah.
and so certainly those sort of telehealth platforms are a way for people to do that. And some people are probably fine with that, right? Can you find a good dietitian there? Sure. But it's like any profession, right? You're going to find people who are good at it and you're going to find people who are not so good at it, right?
Yeah. If you were to give a patient
Mhm.
advice on like how to find the right dietitian for them,
Uh-huh.
what kinds of questions should they be asking
Uh,
when they're searching for a dietitian? Like how would you, hey, I need a dietitian. How do I find one that takes
mhm.
my insurance or is in my area? Like
Mhm.
what should they be looking for?
So I think that they need to shop around, right? A lot of dietitians do free what we call discovery calls, right? People should go to their insurance network, see who's in their network, do a little digging online, look at, whose website resonates with me, call up and make an appointment. You're not going to jive with everybody. And so I think you got to find the right person because we have so much wrapped up with food, right? It's not there's so much emotion and so much history and culture and wrapped up in it that you got to really find someone that you align with. And just because someone doesn't align with you, it doesn't mean you're a bad dietitian, right? It's like you don't want to be friends with everybody. You want to be friends with the people that you align with, right? And so I think people need to do a little shopping around. But, I think our challenge as dietitians right now is we're competing with all of these influencers. And I say coaches like this because anyone can call themselves a coach, right? And so typically, many of those people don't have the knowledge, the expertise, but they're very good at selling. And so a lot of people are sort of falling victim to that. And it's often the people who are the least qualified or the loudest. And so, we're competing with that. So I think dietitians also, I feel like, have kind of a bad reputation.
You think that is?
I don't really know why that is, but yesterday I was somewhere and I told this woman I was a dietitian. She said, "Don't judge me." And I was at a networking event recently, and this woman was eating this like little like fried taco thing, and I said, "I'm a dietitian." She said, "Don't judge me." Like I feel like that's kind of the perception in the public, and I don't know why that is.
And it sucks because if anybody's gonna judge that, it would be these influencers. It's these people who have all of these, like, food rules and a lot of, like, misconceptions and, it's the keto coach is gonna judge you for eating carbs, but, like, the registered dietitian is gonna, like, see how that can fit into your plan and, like, you love it and
Correct.
you keep eating it, let's make it work.
Correct.
So
Like I will typically say like I don't judge. I eat cocoa pebbles for my first breakfast.
I've got my Diet Coke right here. I love food. I don't know why that is. People think dietitians judge. And I wonder, I mean, you kind of shared it, right? Like maybe we do judge in the beginning because our training doesn't set us up well enough to not judge. I mean, I remember being struggling with my weight in my dietetics program, feeling judged by my classmates in that space. Like it maybe the education needs a better look because I got some counseling and coaching training, but What I really got good training on was like how to do an assessment. I can do a
Correct.
great assessment. I can tell you
Correct.
everything you're doing wrong with your
Correct.
eating and where you're missing nutrients.
Correct.
Do that with my
Yep.
eyes closed. But then how do I coach you to make changes? I had one class on that?
So did I. I had one class as an undergrad in motivational interviewing, and it was not enough. I could tell you everything. By the time I graduated, I could tell you about the Krebs cycle in detail, but I couldn't tell you how you might actually make a change. Yeah,
We were so stressed about learning how to calculate a TPN that
totally.
we didn't learn enough about, like,
How to listen.
how other humans live their lives,
Yeah. Right.
and or cultural competence or, cooking skills. I had one cooking class. I burned my arm making macaroni and cheese, and that's all I remember from it. Like,
My cooking class foods were always like the worst. The instructor always would pick out mine and be like, "This is what it's not supposed to be like." Which is funny because now I love to eat because I love to cook because I love to eat, right? So I have to cook. But yeah, I don't know if the curriculum has changed at all. I mean, it was 20 some years ago that I graduated undergrad. So I can't speak to that. But I think that as a whole, we would do much better to have a lot more training and education around how to actually counsel
coach
clients.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that idea of getting the coaching training. My fellow dietitian at Vineyard, Heather, has a well coaches certification, and she is just a rock star on coaching and making resources around tools for patients to kind of coach themselves through things and prompts and how to think about their behaviors from a more macro level and not get so hung up on the little nutrients. And
Yeah.
I just love that. You're inspiring me to maybe seek out that coaching
I
myself.
do I do a lot of talks and a lot of presentations for other dietitians around behavior change counseling and specifically around values-based coaching and how we help our clients connect their behaviors to their core values because that's really what promotes long-term sustainable change is when you have a deeper connection to the type of person you want to be, not just the outcome you're seeking.
Yeah. But aside from well coaches, what are some resources that you really love and recommend to folks to get better at coaching?
Mm. So there's a book called the Coaching Psychology Manual. Really good book. Another book is called The Mindful Coach. I could probably give you like a whole list actually.
Yeah. Let's do a list and I'll put it in the show notes
Okay.
under the podcast because I think that
Yeah.
would be really great.
Okay.
My intern, Amber, is listening to the old school motivational interviewing book for health,
Yeah.
for food and nutrition and fitness.
Hmm.
I guess there's a new version and it has an audible. So she's been listening to it and coming back with all these questions. It's been kind of fun to like revisit that material, but I'm not familiar with a bunch of others. So that would be great. Yeah, a list would be awesome. We'll definitely put it in the show notes for other dietitian. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this world that we're kind of in with nutrition, but also the strength training piece because we are
Mm.
dietitians who lift. And I know you're a big fan, as am I. It's a big part of my life and my practice with what I talk through with my clients who are on the GLP-1 medications and doing intentional weight management, weight loss. We really want to preserve that muscle mass and get people strength training. And I even had somebody today like, should I be doing more than what I'm doing right now? And my question was like, do you have capacity to do more than you're doing right now? And she was like, emotionally or physically? I was like,
Right.
both.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that was an awesome conversation. And so a lot of people think that I'm just going to be like, why aren't you strength training? In the same way that people are like, don't judge my food. They're like,
Yeah.
don't judge my exercise.
Yep.
How is fitness coaching people to make that change with exercise? Is that different than coaching people to change with nutrition? Do you find that one's easier than the other?
No, because really it's about helping people tap into their deeper level of motivation, right? For example, today I had a client who's a mom with two young kids and she's puts herself on the back burner, right? She's juggling two small kids, a job, a household. She frequently forgets to eat. She finds that she's like moody and she has low energy. And so we were talking about her reasons for change. And it really stems to the fact that she wants to be a more present and engaged, patient, loving mother, right? And like that's the impetus. It's not like just to have more energy, but why, right? Because I want to be this type of person. And it's the same with fitness, right? For me personally, it's about I never want my level of physical well-being to limit my life experience. I
Mm,
am someone who values freedom. I'm someone who values adventure. And I see physical fitness and lifting as a way to promote that. And so when I wake up in the morning and I think, well, I don't feel like doing it, it's not even a question. I just do it anyway, right? Because I also really value grit and perseverance and
Coming the
not,
challenge of it. Yeah.
yeah, and like not succumbing to the voice in my head that's like, oh, it's so hard and oh, you can't do it, right? Because if I give in every time that that happens, all I get good at is being a quitter. And that's not the type of life I want to have, right? I want to be someone who's ready at a moment's notice to do whatever it is. And so I think that's really it, is helping our clients tap into that motivation, right? It's not about, well, I need to exercise to lose weight or I want to exercise to have more energy, but like, how does being a fit person align with the type of life you want to lead? And those are the types of questions that as dietitians or coaches, we really need to be asking, because that's the thing that's going to spur someone to change.
Yeah, people always want to know, well, what should I be doing? What exercises? Where should I go? How do I do it? What time of day? What kind of snack should I have? And I was like, we can talk about those details. They're important. We need to make a plan. We need to like have this structure. But I much prefer the conversations around like, what about it brings you joy?
Yeah.
What about it makes you want to go back? What's hard about it? How could we prevent it from being so hard? Like, what could we do to make it easier or funner or more convenient? Like, yeah, those are always better conversations.
Yeah. So
I love it.
the conversation that you had with your client about what do you have capacity to do? I think one of the things that I see that is the biggest thing that undermines people taking action is that they have unrealistic expectations, or their expectations do not align with the time, energy, or knowledge that they have to put in, right? Like you see this like fancy influencer, thin body, fit person, with her little yoga suit on online. And she's working out hard and she's managing her diet very tightly. And she probably doesn't really eat out. And she, brings her Tupperwares when she goes to a party, like that sort of situation, right? Which is fine. But the average person is looking at that thinking, well, if I go to the gym 3 times a week and I go to Zumba twice a week and I eat low carb, like I'm going to look like that.
Mhm.
No. And I think we need to help people understand, like, given the time and the energy that you have to put in, this is probably what you can expect.
And what's
Because
worth it? And is that outcome that you're seeking the,
totally,
like, aesthetic goal that you have in your mind
totally.
actually going to improve your life, your quality of life and how you live it? I know that I could probably I'm on my weight loss journey my whole life, right? I've lost a significant amount of weight from where I started. Could I lose 10 to 20 more pounds?
Yes.
Maybe.
At what cost?
Am I willing to go back to some nutrition behaviors that I don't like, that I'm
Correct.
like, am I willing to, we're going to Disney this weekend to celebrate my daughter's end of the school year. Am I willing to go back to packing food for Disney, or do I just want to go and have whatever and just, right? Like, it's not worth it anymore. But 100 pounds ago, the motivation to make that change, it was there and it was important. And I felt it more heavily to be more inclined to make these big changes. But over the years, I've been able to like release some of those really tightly held behavior changes that weren't even necessary in the first place. And like, you have to almost live it and experience it as a client. Like, you can come to a dietitian and we can coach you through making plans about what you're going to work on and how you're going to think about it. But until you live it and give it a chance and like try it out in your life, we don't know how it's going to work for you. And so you have this great plan that on paper sounds great. And we say, okay, go do it for 2 weeks and come back and tell me how it goes. And they're like, yeah, all that cooking we said we were going to do, it just didn't happen. I'm like, okay, so that was not the plan for you. Let's
Right.
roll it back. How can we do this differently? And we're allowed to change our minds and do things differently.
Yeah. So when I have clients that are, working to lose a considerable amount of weight, or maybe just it's going to be a long time that they're focusing on it, I often encourage them to take a break and practice maintenance, right? And they like look at me like I'm crazy. But the thing is like weight loss is not the goal. The goal is to maintain the healthier weight. right? Those are two very different things. I could give you a meal plan, you could lose weight, definitely, but then what, right? The goal is to maintain. And so we need to learn how to live at that healthier weight. And that means practicing all of those behaviors that we're going to do, right?
Yeah, I have this
People sort of look
conversation.
at me like I'm crazy when I say
I
like
know.
practice maintenance. Like maintenance is a goal, but it is.
It is. It's the most important goal.
Yeah, it's harder than the weight loss.
I run a group that's called, approaching and sustaining maintenance. And I invite everyone who's brand new to their weight loss journey to that group because the most important thing for sustainable maintenance, in my opinion, is a sustainable weight loss journey. Because if we're doing a bunch of very restrictive, very challenging, very sacrificing a lot to achieve this weight loss, and then we get to goal, we expect we're going to be able to just stop doing all these things and maintain the weight. It doesn't work that way. So I think we're very aligned on that whole conversation. I love that so much. You are a wealth of
That's a
knowledge.
harsh reality.
Yeah,
That's a
it's hard.
harsh reality for people to realize, like, I have to do these things forever now.
And it makes you reevaluate whether or not it's worth it. And like I think only the client can say whether or not a behavior change is worth it to them. We can help them
Correct.
figure that out, but like it's not on me to tell you what to do. I want to help you figure out what you want to do.
Correct.
And most clients don't even know that about dietitians. We almost have to do a better job, I think, of just explaining what we do in sessions with people. Hopefully this episode is great for people to understand like what to expect in a nutrition session, because there's a very big misconception out there that I'm just going to give you macros and send you on your
Totally.
way.
I'll never forget this woman I had one time. I was working in primary care and she was maybe like in her late 50s and she came in, we started chatting. She's like, "Oh, I'm here because my doctor told me I have to lose weight." And we started chatting and like she was very physically active. She ate a healthy diet. She didn't want to lose any weight. And so we have this conversation and I sort of jokingly was like, "Well, my work is done. Like, you want to stay the same? Awesome. You're taking care of yourself. You eat well. You're active. Great." And she sort of laughed and like, that was it. Right. Like, it's not my job to tell you what to do. I want to help you to get where you want to go, if anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's it.
Yep.
It's not about us.
People ask a lot too, what should their goal be? What should their goal weight be? I'm like, I don't know. What do you want your goal? Like, what are you thinking? It's not, well, what's the math? Yeah, I can tell you what some math thing says, but like, there's so much other things to think about.
Correct. And
Yeah.
why do you need to decide right now? Right.
Right.
Why can't you just like sort of go with it and see where you land and how you feel? And if you want to, change in the future, fine, maybe not. And that's fine too. Yeah.
I love it. All right, Rebecca, how do we get in touch with you if we want to go to some of your trainings, if you want to see you speak, if a client wants to work with you? How do we find you?
Yeah. So you can go to my website, onestepnutritioncoaching.com. I'm based in New Hampshire. I'm licensed in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, in network with most major insurers. I don't tend to see clients in states that I'm not licensed in, even though I technically could as a coach. But I just feel like that line gets sort of gray. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I sort of use my license of the highest level of my license, which as a dietitian limits how and where I can practice. So I limit that. But onestepnutritioncoaching.com. Happy to talk to anyone and happy to send you a book list if you're interested.
Yes. We're going to put that in the show notes. This has been great. I think any client and dietitian who was listening to this episode probably took away some nuggets. I wrote one down. We are going to definitely think more about technical solutions versus adaptive solutions.
Yeah.
And technical problems versus adaptive problems.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna figure that out in my brain. That's gonna be what I dream about tonight for sure. I definitely
Okay.
This is great. And I'm gonna be a well coach, I think, because you articulate the things that I think I do in session and this motivational interviewing thing that I think I'm okay at. I feel like you have the structure in your brain to like apply it super well. And I just really respect that. And so this was a wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. This was Dietitians Who Lift. If you want to be a guest, you can join us in our Facebook group, Dietitians Who Lift, and schedule yourself. And we'll see you next time.